Hello, friends. I hope you've been doing great, wonderful, absolutely fantastic. So we're going to talk about FIFA World Cup 2022. Well, I think the FIFA World Cup is one of those rare spectacles on this planet, which is not only watched by millions, but it's something which is an event in itself. We live every moment of the game. We adore our favorite superstars, and sometimes we have our ups and sometimes we have our downs. And the FIFA World Cup 2022 has not been any different. So we're going to talk about the FIFA World Cup, but what we're not going to talk about is we will not talk about goals, we will not talk about penalty shootouts, we will not talk about referees, we will not talk about any of that. So what exactly are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about what do we learn from the FIFA World Cup 2022. Now, there is a lot that we can learn from sports. And one of the statements that I love, I believe it was made by Plato way back. He said, you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than in an year of conversation. I think very deep insight in those words, isn't it? So we're going to look at what are some of those moments from the FIFA World Cup 2022, which we can learn from and perhaps go ahead and apply in our own lives. So you could be a parent, you could be a teacher, you could be a leader, you could be a follower, you could be anyone. But this applies to all of us, irrespective of the fact whether you like watching football or you don't enjoy watching football. This is for all of us. So let's look at what are some of the prominent lessons from the FIFA World Cup 2022. As I said, one heck of an event, and there is so much to look forward to from every game. So here are some of my favorite moments. I don't guarantee that these are all the moments in themselves, but I think these are some of the very powerful moments which leave a deep impression on our minds and of course do teach us a lot as well. So let's look at some of these moments which have given us so much to look forward to. So the first thing I would like to talk about is an image. Take a look at this image. This was a match played between the giants Argentina and Saudi Arabia. And similarly, there was a match that was played between Japan and Germany. So you had two giants in the form of Argentina and Germany who went down against Saudi Arabia and Japan, respectively. Now, often when we look at any series, whether it's the Football World Cup or the Cricket World Cup or any other sport, we often look at teams and say, that's a superpower. That's a giant of a team. And then you have some underdogs and you have minnows. But honestly, if you look at it, there are no minnows in sport because on the given day, what matters is, are you putting in your 101%? And if you do that, no matter who is against you, no matter which team is playing in front of you, you can still create miracles. And that is exactly what happened when Saudi Arabia trumped Argentina in one of the earlier qualifiers. Similarly, Japan defeated Germany. Two giant teams going down to teams which were not so accomplished. Now, you might say that, it's one of those days when miracles tend to happen or they were plainly lucky. Yeah, that could also be the case. But the fact is, you cannot take anyone or any team for granted. This applies so very well in our professions as well, isn't it? Often when we talk to people, we tend to rate them as someone who's a performer, someone who's an underperformer. But sometimes even people who are not treated with a lot of respect in terms of their potential tend to come up with miracles. And that's why it's important that we need to establish mutual respect. And we got to look at everybody with a sense of respect. Because on the given day, anyone can do better. But all of this could happen only because of years of practice and, of course, a lot of self-belief. So if you look at teams like Saudi Arabia and Japan, which were not really that accomplished, there are two things that differentiate them. One is a lot of self-belief, and the other is the ability to perform on the big stage. Because you might do wonders by playing well in earlier matches or in smaller matches in smaller tournaments, but on the given day, playing in front of millions of people who are watching you, every move that you make, it takes a lot of heart and courage to perform under such circumstances. So it takes away nothing from teams like Argentina and Germany. I believe there is absolutely no shame in losing to teams who play well or better than you on the given day. But the lesson for all of us is, let's not take any person or any team or any organization for that matter for granted, because you never know. Lesson number 2 comes from another team which has surprised everyone, and I call it the David defeating Goliath, not once, but twice. And this is the Moroccan team, which created miracles again by defeating first Spain. And then, of course, they went on to defeat Portugal. Now, this defeat in itself is a testimony to the fact that any underdog or so-called underdog can perform well on the given day. So once again, you can see that a lot of self-belief being portrayed. And the first match when Moroccan team defeated the Spanish team, as well as later went on to defeat the Portugal team, you could see the joy on their faces, right from their coach, the fans, their parents, everyone was on cloud nine. And why not? Because it really means a lot to a nation like Morocco. So the fact is, it doesn't matter whether you're a small country or a big country or a mid-sized country. What really matters is, on the given day, do you have the real key players who can make a difference? And you had players who were not known, who were not really famous, taking up the responsibility and making it big on the grand stage. Now, the question to ask is, many a times when we are performing in our own roles, maybe in the corporate world, or you run your own business, or you're a student, or whoever you are, there are moments where we can make a difference, where we can make our name shine against all odds. But the fact is, are we willing to take that ownership? Are we willing to take that leap of faith and make that difference? Because if that leap of faith is taken, who knows, maybe the David within you could defeat the Goliath in any challenge that you find yourself as a part of. So I hope that the David in you wakes up and follows what the Moroccan team has shown us this World Cup, that nothing is impossible. We then move on to another beautiful scene, and I think this is one of my favorite moments from the World Cup. So there was a match that was played between Argentina and Netherlands. It was a very, very tough game. Both the teams had great players. Both the teams gave it their 100%. And towards the end of it, Argentina ended up being victorious. Now, what is important is not just the victory, but what happened after the victory. So everyone from the Argentinian team ran towards each other, congratulated each other, hugged each other. And this was a time when the skipper, the captain, Lionel Messi, instead of running to his teammates, ran to his goalkeeper, who's also a teammate, of course, but he ran towards Martinez, because it was Martinez who had saved 2 goals in that match, which made all the difference. And it is moments like these which can be the difference between victory or defeat. Now, what is important about this gesture, which is applauded across the world now, is that as a captain, you need to remember players who give it everything. And when you actually succeed, you win, you cannot afford to forget about them. You got to make sure that you go ahead, you applaud, you thank them, you give them a pat on the back. And that is what a true leader does. And that is perhaps one of the reasons why Lionel Messi is loved and revered, not just for his football playing abilities, but also as a skipper, as a captain. The responsibility that you take to identify people who have contributed towards your victory. And I think we all have a lesson here as leaders or potential leaders, is that we should never ever forget the contribution of every person who has added value to your team and made the impossible look possible. So perhaps there's an opportunity for you to go ahead and hug someone or thank them or shake hands with them or pat on their back and say, you know what, well done, buddy. Perhaps the Messi in you might remember yourself and applaud your own efforts for a long, long time. Another picture, slightly more controversial, but I think nonetheless very important lesson for all of us to look at. So Cristiano Ronaldo, who doesn't love him? I think is one of the most fabulous players the world has ever seen, not just Portugal. And again, one of those rare players who is known, respected, and loved for his football playing abilities. But what happened is there was a fallout between Ronaldo and his coach, because of which Ronaldo was benched for a match and he was not given the opportunity to play that game. Now, When the coach was asked, Coach Santos said that I did not really punish him. This is just a controversy. Ronaldo took the decision as a leader, and everything is okay between us, which could be the case. You never know. It could be a media hype as well. But the fact is, one thing which is important here for all of us to look at and understand is no player is bigger than the game. No player is bigger than the team. So often leaders, professionals, get obsessed with their titles, get obsessed with the amount of power that comes with those titles. But we got to learn and understand that it's not about those titles. People do not follow titles. People follow what a true leader does for them. And that is something which I believe Coach Santos was wanting to tell Ronaldo through his actions, is that it's not just about you. It's not about whether you are comfortable or convenient in what you're doing. It's ultimately whether the team is winning or the team is not winning. And that is what makes all the difference. Now, take nothing away from Ronaldo, amazing player, someone who is respected for who he is, but then no player can ever be bigger than the team or the game. And I think that's one of the lasting lessons that we need to take from this particular incident that happened during this World Cup. And I love this one. This, I suppose, is one of the finest moments that you'll see, not just in this World Cup, but in the history of sports ever. Japanese coach Hajime Moriyasu, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So Mr. Moriyasu bowed to the fans. Why did he do it? Because Japan's team lost at the World Cup. They were ousted. They had to leave after their loss. And this is what the coach did in front of all the fans. Now, he didn't have to do this, but what it goes to show is a lot of grace and dignity and respect for the fans, because the fans give it everything. They spend money, they invest time, and most importantly, they invest a lot of emotions in their team. So when the team doesn't do well, it's not just the players who feel bad about it. It's an entire nation who might go sleepless on that night. And this is what was acknowledged in this beautiful action by Coach Hajime Moriyasu. He bowed in front of the fans in the stadium. And that just goes to show that ultimately we are all entertainers on the grand spectacle. We are all doing our part of duty. And when we perform our duty well, we should keep our head held high. But when we fail to perform our duties, there is nothing wrong in saying, I'm sorry, we tried, but we couldn't be better on the given day. So the question is, you cannot take away humility from any leader. The moment you separate humility from a leader, you cease to be a leader. So in your role, in your capacity, perhaps there might be opportunities when a lot depended on you, when people looked up to you and you couldn't perform. Well, nothing to feel bad about it. There are days when we do and there are days that we don't. But I think if we remember the humility and acknowledge the fact that people trusted you and you couldn't deliver, I think people are likely to give you another opportunity, another chance. So it wouldn't be wrong to say that on that day, Japan lost the match, but they won millions of hearts across the world with what their coach did. I think it's an important, lasting lesson for every coach, every leader, every parent to keep your hand on the heart and say, we are sorry when we make a mistake. And that is what provides us with another chance, another opportunity, and earns us a lifetime of respect from everyone. Another beautiful moment came in when England unfortunately lost, and they lost big time. But what happened in that match is something to remember. So Harry Kane, who is the captain of the England team, had to take a penalty and he missed. And the moment he missed, people couldn't just believe it, because it was far more easy given the standards that the English team sets for itself. But what happened after that is Harry Kane was absolutely distraught. He just couldn't believe that he couldn't score a goal at that particular moment. He had absolutely no clue what to do, what to say after that. He was speechless. He was absolutely heartbroken. And that is when a 19-year-old kid called Jude Bellingham from the team walked up to his captain and said, "Captain, it's all right. It's okay." That's such a beautiful action to take, isn't it? Often we always look up to the captain to do that to a subordinate or a member in the team who hasn't performed well and cheer up the youngster. But here you go, a youngster playing for his captain went up to the captain and said, "It's okay. It happens." Now, that did not change what happened on that night, but it speaks volumes for the kind of camaraderie, for the kind of culture that you develop in your team, where people support each other rather than blaming each other. So can we develop a culture in our teams where people support each other, where people say, you tried your best, sometimes you fail, it's okay, we are with you, rather than saying, how the hell you couldn't score? Because that is what generally happens, especially in the corporate world, where people expect each other to perform consistently and exponentially. It's very hard to see people supporting each other emotionally. But it is moments like these in sports that we got to take a cue from and perhaps apply that in our context too. Because if we can do that, we will not only build a great team, but perhaps a great organization and hopefully a great nation as well. So I think this is one of the major highlights from FIFA 2022 that we got to remember and apply. Okay, nobody loves to see their favorite sports star cry. We saw that happening a lot this time. The world cried when Cristiano Ronaldo cried, and I suppose the world cried when Neymar cried. Very, very heartbreaking to see your favorite heroes go down, in spite of all the efforts that they've put in, go down the way they do. But they do because they're sports person. And on the given day, anything can go wrong. And this is what happened when Brazil, who are pegged to be all-time favorites, who were supposed to do well in this World Cup, which they did to a great extent, unfortunately, were ousted from the World Cup by Croatia, another great team who has been performing consistently well across World Cups. But in this match, what happened was something that you'll rarely ever get to see. When Brazil lost to Croatia in the penalty shootout, Neymar couldn't stop his tears because there is so much that a sports person gives to prepare for a World Cup. Years and years of practice, perhaps decades of practice, and they want to do well on the world stage because they're representing their nation. So he just couldn't stop his tears. And when that happened, he was full of tears. A small boy from the crowd walked up to Neymar. And guess who was it? It was a small boy who represented Team Croatia. Yes, it was Ivan Perisic's son from the Croatian team who walked up to Neymar because he couldn't see his favorite sports person shedding tears. Now, isn't that a wonderful moment? I think this is what sportsman spirit is truly about. It's one of those moments which gives you goosebumps, but most importantly, it gives you hope that in spite of everything that we do at the world level to win or to win tournaments and matches, sometimes we fail, but it's moments like these that give us hope that the world is not such a bad place after all. A small boy having the courage and the humility to do such a thing on the world stage is beyond words. Phenomenal. I think that child deserves a World Cup of humanity for his actions. And I think that speaks volumes. Is that at the end of the day, we are not enemies. We are just opponents. And if we can develop that kind of camaraderie in what we do, whether we are competing with each other as teams, as organizations, or as nations, I think if we just remember this, that at the end of the day, we are only opponents trying to do better than each other and not enemies, I think the world will be a far, far better place. Kudos to that child and what he did in this particular match. I think it's an action that the world would not and should not forget. Last but not the least, I think it's not just about the people who play the game. It's also about the people who watch the game. Many a times you don't get to participate in the best of projects that you're working on. You don't get to participate in an exciting opportunity. You are just a bystander. You're just an audience, just a spectator cheering up for your favorite people out there. But even with what you do as audience, as spectators, goes a long, long way. And this is what the Japanese team has always done. When I say Japanese team, I'm not talking about the 11 men on the ground. I'm talking about Team Japan as a nation. Such a fabulous country with such a remarkable culture and ethic. Almost after every match, the Japanese spectators took up the responsibility of cleaning the stadium on their own. Nobody had told them about this. Nobody had asked them to do it. They wouldn't have been penalized for it, yet they did it because it was the right thing to do. And they would have done it anywhere, not just in Qatar, but anywhere in the world. Now, that just goes to show that you don't just respect your country, you respect other countries as well. You don't just respect your team, you respect every other team. Now, we have often heard of situations after football matches where two countries or spectators of two countries collide against each other, fight against each other. There are conflicts, sometimes even riots. And here is an example, a shining example of what the audience, the spectators can really do. Once again, this time, the Japanese people, not just the Japanese team, but the Japanese people won the hearts of millions of those people watching live telecasts from home. And they did this not because the cameras were on. They would have done it even without the cameras. I suppose we were lucky to capture this image because it just goes to show that you still own up, you still showcase and demonstrate responsibility. Now, the question to ask is, are we willing to showcase such kind of ownership in what we do on a day-to-day basis? Perhaps if we do, we can contribute a lot to our teams and to our organizations. So those were some of my favorite moments. Please do let me know what were your favorite moments from the FIFA World Cup 2022. I'm sure this is not an entire list. There are many other moments which I might have missed out on, and I would love to hear from you. What were some of your favorite moments from this World Cup? So thank you so much for listening. I hope some of these insights and lessons were interesting enough for you. So let's try and put them into practice and become better personalities and better versions of who we are as individuals, sportsperson, professionals, or any walk of life that we represent. Thank you so much for your time. And let's hope that we continue to be great professionals in every sense of the term. Thank you so much.